Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with X4, also known as X-Men Fantastic Four. The story kicked off with butting heads and a damaged space station, as the X-Plane took 4 merry mutants and half the FF to try and save some astronauts in danger. After a confrontation with the Brood, the team escape and get hit with a cosmic storm. A unique storm that results in a crash landing and particularly fantastic new powers for the X-Men involved. Cover to issue 3 features Mr. Fantastic, Storm, Human Torch, and Cyclops all looking up at a giant space fish in the sky. I caught one this big. Well, technically, space whale would be more accurate, but more accurate than that would be to call it an Akanti, a race of spacefaring creatures, some of whom have been used by the Brood for transport purposes, hence one's appearance here. Also, now instead of Pat Lee's Dreamwave Studios on art, it's Dream Engine. No, Dreamwave went defunct, but I wasn't aware of any name change going on. After the recap, which sees Gambit outside his box... Weird, maybe he hit his head and got jostled out from the crash. But I digress. We see the heroes from the cover, joined by Beast, flying in search of the X-Plane. With no contact so far, it's assumed they'd crashed, but Storm holds out hope that they're fine, given the worst dangers they've faced before. Cyclops is still unsettled, though. But those screams! Oh, please, you screamed worse when Logan threw those rubber spiders in your face. Then you started firing your optic blasts everywhere, and it was weeks before we could use the den again. Reed doesn't want to jump to any conclusions, which makes Scott snap at him, since he said the cosmic storm that hit the plane could screw up the X gene. It's clarified that was just a theory with variables to consider, but One Eye is unwilling to lose any more of his people. Something pierces the Fantasticar from the ground, and it's gonna drop. Storm manages to land the others safely with some winds, while Torch dodges some purple plasma blasts, and eventually they find their attackers were in fact the X-Men of the away team, clearly altered by the phenomena in space. Guys, you look great, but Halloween was a couple of weeks ago. You really should pay closer attention to your calendars. The altered X-Men begin lashing out at their comrades, with Ororo putting the kibosh on Johnny's attempt to counterattack. They're still part of the team, and even Reed doesn't want to harm them. Though there's the matter of where Ben and Sue are. The attack continues, with Nightcrawler showing off his newfound invisibility, and Gambit adapting to Johnny's powers. Does this mean his new codename is going to be the Cajun Torch? Emma Dex, one of the smartest brains on the planet, though given that Reed Richards is elastic, it kind of raises a few questions for me, but perhaps there's a detail I'm missing vis-a-vis his stretchiness. When Scott tries reaching out to her, she utters his name all spooky-like and then knocks him aside too. Well, they say everyone's got a type, so I guess Scott's would be classified as psychics that go into space and then come back all twisted and violent. I'm not a big fan of Emma, but at least she's not wiping out star systems. Fortunately, Hank comes to his aid as Torch is using his own experience in losing his flame to extinguish Remy's just long enough to knock him out. Given the similarities of these powers to the Fantastic Four's, Reed theorizes that such abilities aren't random variations. Susan and Ben are probably fine, since they've already been changed. Unless we're dealing with a Freaky Friday situation where they adopt the traits of the X-Men they were on board with, in which case, expect the Invisible Woman to be a crude cigar-smoking pickpocket that plays cards and insults Cyclops a lot, while Ben becomes a vain acrobat that will only wear ridiculously expensive white outfits. Uncomfortably revealing outfits. Kurt tries to get the drop on Johnny, but he's quick to flame on, distracting the elf for Reed to trap him so Scott can hit them both with an optic blast, though with some reluctance. Because of his stretchy powers, Reed is a bit frazzled, but they manage to incapacitate Nightcrawler. Wolverine grounds Storm and seems to close in on her, with various long-range attacks not doing much to stop him. But fortunately, Bang Grim cuts in and clobbers the Knucklehead, but good. I like Wolvie and everything, but there's something oddly satisfying about this scene. Anyway, Susan's managed to encase Emma in a force field, requiring Cyclops to precisely hit her in the forehead to knock her unconscious. Man, I do not want to be around for their next couples therapy session.
And not just because I never liked them being a couple in the first place.
An FF transport is en route as they're preparing to take them all to the Baxter building for examination, but it turns out Logan isn't quite out of the fight yet and escapes into the forest. Reed thinks the changed X-Men are reacting to the excruciating pain of having their chromosomes altered, causing them to lash out. Psyche, Thing, and Susan will head back to the mansion, try and locate their clawed friend using Cerebra in case Ororo and Torch can't find him from above. Meanwhile, Doctors Richards and McCoy will do what they can to reverse the effects of the cosmic rays.
Yeah, heard that one before.
Oh, come off it, Ben. You were cured 5 times last month and ended up choosing to become the Thing all over again each time. Once it was just so you could get a discount at Arby's.
Soon, in Reed's lab, the extra mutated mutants are in stasis, while the brains try to figure out how they have powers just like the Fantastic Four. Reed had considered there was an elemental basis to it, Johnny being fire, Ben earth, Sue air, and Reed stretching being akin to the fluidity of water.
So does that mean that in Rise of the Silver Surfer, when Chris Evans had all their powers at once, he was technically the Avatar?
However, he didn't give it too much credence since there wasn't much basis for it. But carrying on with the theory now, Gambit and Nightcrawler representing fire and air respectively work, and it's suggested that because adamantium is at times classified as a liquid metal, that may link Wolverine to water.
Yeah, but that's not Logan's power. It's something implanted in him, and it happens to be one of, if not the, densest metals on the planet regardless. What would make more sense is that his classification as water stems from his healing factor, which is constantly repairing any damage he incurs as his cells wash over and fill the wounds as water might fill and cover openings in a surface. Let it be known that the angry Spork outwitted the smartest man in the Marvel Universe. Hiring me doesn't sound like such a bad idea now, does it, DC? Hint, hint?
Richards is more perplexed by Emma's mutation, however. I would think it as obvious as Gambit. Diamond's coming from Earth. But why Diamond? Emma's mutant powers are telepathic in nature.
Yes, but she's very rich and has insanely expensive tastes. Hey, it makes about as much sense as your liquid metal adamantium theory.
Actually, it's because her secondary mutation allows her to turn her body into a diamond state. At the time, it was a fairly new phenomena, with some mutants gaining another ability, which I think is related to why Beast changed in appearance to something more lion-like. Emma was the only one of the 4 affected who possesses such a secondary power, and she was the most coherent in the fight, so she may hold the key to a cure. They make contact with the Institute, where Storm says they've pinpointed Logan, but there's a bigger problem. The Space Shuttle Titan, which had been docked on the space station Simulacra, is entering Earth's orbit and headed for New York City, with Brood on board.
Which also happens to be the least purchased window decal on Amazon.
Issue 4's cover features a twist on the classic Fastball special, where the Thing is chucking Wolverine at the reader against a cloudy, puffy, dusty-looking background. It's cool, something you'd expect to happen given the pairing involved, though oddly enough, now Pat Lee's studio is Dream Engine, one word.
Did they forget to add a space there, or was Pat Lee just rapidly changing the name before it went under for whatever reason?
The issue begins with the ship beelining for the city, as Ororo and Susan watch its arrival. Though given how close it looks in this panel, the last one makes it seem as if the shuttle quickly started flying in reverse. I don't think it's just me. Perspective definitely feels off here. We get a splash page of Susan saying this is her responsibility, since, remember, she stopped the X-Men from killing the shuttle crew that were infected with brood eggs, which she now acknowledges as a mistake. Storm disagrees, saying she would have done the same thing had she been present, striving to protect life. There may even be a way to cure the infection, as has been done in the past, even with the weather mutant herself, but for now there's a city to save. The shuttle is coming in hot, and it'll be up to Ororo and Johnny to cool it down and slow its descent as best they can.
Is this a mesoscale convective system? Because I see 3 storms working together. Oh, come on, I had to do research for that pun.
Torch flies to the underbelly, absorbing the heat of re-entry, and is backed up by a quick downpour to cool off the ship. Ororo then nudges its trajectory using the winds so it'll go in the direction they want. It's working, Suze! We're headed right for you, up Broadway!
And nothing of value was lost.
Sue then constructs an invisible slide for the shuttle, guiding it safely to a vacant intersection.
Foolish humans! Your meddling was all part of our plan to get us to Hamilton on time. We've had tickets for 1.5 years, and we are not about to assimilate your species before we watch it for ourselves. The reviews have been that good.
And they land right next to an advertisement for a Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie. The book was published in '05, so it's probably referencing Spider-Man 2, except its earliest release wasn't June 14th, but the 22nd. Artist using creative license, scheduling change in real life, it's not that big a concern, because, alien lizard bug invasion going on. The maneuver was taxing on Susan, as one might expect, and now the brood need to be contained. S.H.I.E.L.D. managed to evacuate the citizens, but due to some stuff going on with the Avengers, they won't be around to assist.
Turns out in this universe there was also a successful MCU franchise, but after the first Avengers movie, Disney decided it would be cheaper just to hire the actual superheroes for all subsequent films.
It gets mentioned in the final chapter that the team disbanded, but the specific issues don't get an editor's caption or anything. As McCoy and Richards monitor things from the Baxter Building, it's down to the Fantastic Four and the X-Men, but the latter are not at full strength, given what's happened with Kurt and the others.
Yeah, if only you had more than 8 members on the X-Men to call on, like people who might be at the mansion or in the city, friends that could be called on to lend their considerable might. But no, you've only ever had 8.
Hank thinks they could be firing on all X cylinders again in a very risky procedure that he and Reed are very vague about, only noting that it involves radiation and that it's a chance Beast is willing to take, and hopes that Cyclops and the Thing can retrieve Logan in time for their one shot at this, whatever it is. Speaking of, Ben and Scott have taken the Fantasticar, which is either repaired quickly or this is a spare, not sure which, to Canada and stop above a small cottage. Since their target might hear or smell them coming if they land, because I guess the car flies silently or something, I don't know, Grimm opts to crash through the roof.
This is exactly why he got fired as a door-to-door salesman.
For such an accomplished pilot, Ben Grimm sure does fly like a rock. Logan still has enough brains to fight, though, sending Ben flying as the car lands and Summers joins in. On a 2-page spread, the extent to which Wolverine's been able to use his elasticity has improved more than they anticipated, as he evades all their long-range attacks. So, Thing decides to get up close, again, getting coiled up by Logan.
That's the only way we're gonna wrap this up!
If only Reed had joined them, perhaps we could have seen him and Wolverine get into a freestyle rap battle.
Just as with Nightcrawler, Psyche unleashes his optic blast, for an extended amount of time too, until eventually the Force takes its toll on Logan and he's unconscious.
Wuss.
Which you're saying while he's unconscious. Should we be reading into that, Mr. Grimm?
They're heading back to New York, with Logan, I presume, in that fancy suitcase strapped to the back. Good to know Reed installed a luggage rack on his flying car. Johnny meets up with them to confirm the Brood are still in the shuttle, for whatever reason, and Thing suggests he take Wolvie to the Baxter solo and let Summers keep tabs on things in the city. Scott says he wants to see Emma, needs to see her, but Aunt Petunia's ever-loving nephew thinks it'd be best if he waited until after this was over. There's a moment of silence until One Eye agrees, thanking Ben and heading to the streets with Torch.
It's a brief moment, but a good one to display the Thing's humanity. He knows that Psyche is getting emotional, and that might be made worse by seeing his girlfriend as she is now. More like Ben. Keeping his tactical mind on the larger threat is probably the better option, even if the Rocky powerhouse would be more useful should force be necessary. After all, the Thing just loves to fight.
Though I'll admit I could be reading too much into it since my knowledge of the FF is limited, and these two haven't exactly had a lot of time to get chummy. Anyway, Ben brings Logan to Reed's lab and immediately places him in a stasis tube, and what the heck is Cyclops doing there?
Was that moment just now a feint? Did he have a different mutant teleporter on speed dial and have them just taken to Emma anyway? Jerk move, Slim.
I'm guessing this mistake is either an honest error on behalf of the artist, or possibly a leftover from a previous draft of the script. Anyway, Wolvie is encased in a tube, like the others, his genetic code already uploaded thanks to Beast, just as Grimm sees something through the window. Johnny has ignited 2 signals in the sky, one for each team, and the issue ends on a 2-page spread of multiple Akanti in the sky, probably with an alien horde in tow, and the brood inside the shuttle opening the hatch. And Reed? What the heck is he doing here when he was just in the lab?
I'm definitely going with artist mishap here, since expecting us to think he'd get there so quickly is too much of a stretch. But even with that faux pas, it doesn't mean it's a terrible book.
There were some odd mistakes you'd think an editor would catch, but since the misplaced characters aren't acknowledged by the others, it's not overly impactful. Also, weird that issue 2's cover kind of spoiled the ending of that issue, but issue 3's cover sort of spoiled the ending of issue 4. And issue 4's cover wasn't indicative of anything at all, rather just some cool poster-worthy imagery.
So we have more aliens, fractured teams, and nary an Avenger in sight. Tune in next week to see how our heroes stop this threat. Provided they don't spontaneously pop up in completely different comics. I'm the Angry Spork, and man have I got issues.